Peter Muhlenberg. He pastored in Woodstock, Virginia. He also served in the Virginia House of Burgesses with George Washington and with Patrick Henry. In fact, it was Washington and Henry who recommended Muhlenberg to lead the 8th Virginia Cavalry. On January the 21st, 1776, Muhlenberg stood in front of his church and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's a time to preach, there's a time to pray, but that time has passed for me now. There is a time also to fight, and that time has now come." He stepped off to the side and began to remove his preaching band. As he did so, he then began to remove his preacher's robe that he wore, that they wore in those days. Underneath his robe, he was wearing a colonial colonel's uniform. He stood in front of his men in his congregation. He said, "Men, who will follow me?" He walked to the door of his church, opened it. They began to sign the muster roll. He led the 8th Virginia Regiment as a Lutheran pastor all through the war. They were at Yorktown. He helped force the surrender of Cornwallis. He was eventually promoted to Major General. He is just one of the many of hundreds of pastors all over the colonies who led their men from their congregations to stand for liberty. Presbyterian preachers like James Caldwell, who gave his life in the cause. Baptist preachers, Methodist preachers, every preacher that you can imagine stood and led their men to fight for liberty because they knew if liberty was lost, the gospel would be driven underground. Now, what does that mean to us? Well, in the 18th century, the church and the pulpit presided over the sunrise of liberty in North America. If the 21st century church does not reawaken and the pulpit does not come alive with righteousness, we will preside over the sunset of liberty in North America. God, let it not be. The historian said that the pastors of the Revolution did not hesitate to attack the great political and social evils of their day. Another historian said that the fathers of the Republic did not separate politics and religion, but considered the separation ungodly. What have we been told today? We've been told the exact opposite. I am a Baptist pastor. I also serve in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. And I travel around the country telling the story of the pastors who stood. I want to close with one last illustration. A 25-year-old preacher was asked by George Washington to preach to the troops the night before the Battle of Brandywine Creek, which happened on September the 11th, 77. He preached a very short sermon because the sun was setting. Once he finished his sermon, he looked out across the soldier and he said, "God, prosper the cause." The next day, that 25-year-old preacher fought with Peter Muhlenberg, gave his life for liberty. Friends, the pulpit must come alive again today. We must speak out boldly, unashamedly. I'm calling for pastors to run for office, call their people to run for office, and let's be the salt and the light. And my prayer is, God, prosper the cause.